Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. I'm Tony Gerdeman here, as always, with Ron Burgundy. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. I'm Tony.
You're gonna have to leave this all in. Listen, we're just gonna roll with it. You're not gonna get it. It's fine. I'm Tom Moore. You know who I am. That's Tony Gerdeman. We're here to talk about the Ohio State-Illinois game and what we learned rewatching the game afterwards. Because, as we've established, always get to real life doesn't have instant replay, and so we get to a chance to really take a different look and give you a little bit after our instant reaction show following the game. We get a chance to then have a little bit more of a delayed reaction show, which you always end up seeing some different things, noticing some different things. Tony, I noticed that you've managed to compose yourself, so why don't you go ahead and start us out?
Here's one that I kind of noticed on Twitter in the day or so after the game, and then watching it live, I noticed again. I am sure that Davison Igbinosun is one of the most hated players amongst opposing fan bases, and not just because of the post-play celebrations, but because of the handsiness, the 100% belief that everything he's doing should be a penalty, and why aren't they calling it? And they finally called it, but what about the 5 other times? Why didn't they call that? So one of the things that I learned is these people out there, because I tweeted out video of Davison Igbinosun saying, why, stop throwing at me. And the replies from Illinois fans was exactly what you would expect. And so, yes, this is something I learned in the days after, and then rewatching this, because the crowd reaction as well. And then you could even tell when they were replaying it on the in-stadium scoreboards, they're not showing it on TV, but you can tell as the crowd is watching it that they're yelling even more at the replay and the hands.
Well, I think this is one of these things where it's like, exactly how tightly do you want them to call this? Because this can become a completely unwatchable game very quickly. It's one of those things where you look and you're like, yeah, he is a physical corner, and sure, if you want to call it tightly, you could call it on every play. Guess what, Tony? Opposing cornerbacks will every once in a while grab onto Ohio State receivers as well. It's much like opposing offensive lines will occasionally hold at the point of attack or outside their frame, just as Ohio State players will occasionally commit said fouls as well. So, you're not going to call everything, but you get to the point where they don't call one, and then everyone's looking for it, and because everyone knows who he is, then you're looking for it immediately. And the first time everyone's outraged, and then the second time everyone's even more outraged, because now it's once is a happenstance, twice is a coincidence, 3 times is enemy action. Well, Tony, it was more than 3 times, so I don't know who else you can blame other than the Big Ten official. I didn't even think the Big Ten officials did a particularly great job in this game, but there's a bunch of crap that I thought was kind of like iffy. But and the Michigan USC game too, I thought there were a few calls in that one as well. We talked about that on yesterday's show, but yeah, you're not going to call everything, and you kind of at some point you have to sort of if the guy gets his head around. We talked about this on the post game show. If the guy gets his head around, and Igbinosun pretty consistently did, they're generally not going to call the penalty. That's not in the rule. It doesn't say, well, if he's looking back for the ball, it's not a penalty. That's just how the rule is always enforced. And, Ohio State fans will at some point have a cornerback grabbing it at Jeremiah Smith, but turning his head back and looking for the ball. And they're going to go nuts then, just because everyone goes nuts about everything. But it's not always a massive conspiracy. Sometimes it's just, this is how they officiate football. All right. So from one corner to another, let's talk a little bit about Jermaine Matthews, who this felt a little bit like Jermaine Matthews Appreciation Day, because you had Lorenzo Styles Jr. out for the game. And the big question was who's going to cover Hank Beatty. And boy, this is going to be a real challenge for Lorenzo Styles Jr. And then he's out. So they move Jermaine Matthews inside to cover Hank Beatty. He did a really solid job. Beatty finished 7 catches, 48 yards. That's a guy who typically finishes with 148 yards. So that was already a really good start. But he also, on the opening drive for Illinois, had the deflection that led to an interception. He later had, he was on a corner blitz in the second half, stripped the ball, and that led to the fumble recovery that helped it go from 27-10 to 34-10 and like really put the game away. We don't talk about Jermaine Matthews very much on these shows because Jermaine Matthews, people go after Davison Igbinosun. Everyone just leaves. Everyone just goes, no. That's, on the map, like the old timey map, it just says here be monsters. And that's that's Jermaine Matthews' side of the field in the offensive meeting rooms for opposing teams. It's just don't throw that guy. And you saw when he was covering a guy who Illinois really had to throw to, he's around the ball, he's making plays, and it's like, oh, well, this is why people don't throw at him normally.
He got a pass interference call late in the game, and he was mad at himself. I don't think he was mad at the call or the ref necessarily. He was mad at himself that that happened. But he's constant energy. He's fantastic to watch and great teammate and exactly what you want. And his strip fumble was really, really nice job of just getting his hand in there, knocking it away. Outstanding job overall. And nobody's going to say a bad word about him. Let's stick on the corners because the touchdown that Aaron Scott gave up at the end of the game was the same touchdown that Michigan gave up to start the game against USC and Jacoby Lane. And basically, so you've got a receiver outside in the slot kind of, and you've got the defender right there on him. And the play is like a fake swing pass or hitch, and the receiver starts blocking at first and then throws the defender aside. And that's what happened against Aaron Scott. The receiver starts blocking and then throws him aside, and then he's open for like what looks like a wide open slant. Against Michigan, when this happens, the first touchdown for Jacoby Lane, the rules official comes in and said that should be offensive pass interference. That's absolutely 100% offensive pass interference. And then you watch this one, and Aaron Scott's like, like he grabbed me and threw me aside. So it is interesting. It's certainly if you were just to do that, like you might get something called on you. But it was at the end of the game. Refs maybe want to go home. But of course, that was at the start of the game for Michigan, and there was no concern about calling it there either. It was just interesting. Felt a little bit bad for Aaron Scott, who certainly wants to make a good impression when he's out there, and he ends up giving up one of those touchdowns. The other touchdown, real quick, Tom, having to go through all of that just to have to then break out a pitch play where it was a fantastic job of design. They've got two tight ends on the left side, so the defense has to be over there, and so they don't have the numbers are in Illinois' advantage once you add in the pitch. And on the snap, the right tackle goes and takes Peyton Pierce because he's the guy that has to defend the pitch, and there's just nobody out there. Just really good job on the touchdown that should have counted, and also nice job on a touchdown that should not have counted by any means, as all of the rules officials know out there.
Well, I think it's kind of telling what teams have to go to in order to score inside the 5 against Ohio State. Ohio State had not given up a touchdown in the red zone all season. And it's like, okay, well, what is Illinois going to do? Are they going to just be able to line up the ball and, line up and just run the ball, or, throw it, beat a receiver, beat a defensive back cleanly one-on-one? No, it was, they were running, they pulled out all the crap inside the 5. There was a play where he threw like an underhand shovel pass inside to a wide receiver where it's like he looked like a softball pitcher throwing it, and Tywone Malone spun. They talked about this in the broadcast, spun like 180 degrees, which is not easy to do for a gentleman of his size, and tracked the running back down. Caden Curry ran Luke Altmaier down from behind when it looked like Altmaier was going to be able to run the ball in. They had two plays where back-to-back Hank Beatty and Luke Altmaier got stopped, where you watched it live and you thought he might be in, and then nope, they did not get the ball in. And Sonny Styles had a great tackle right at the goal line. There was one other, I don't remember who the other one was, but it was really, really impressive. And so to score on 4th and goal from the 1, you have to run a trick play. Like that's, it was very creative play design, obviously a perfectly legal play, but it was like, this is what you have to do to get the ball that far against the Ohio State defense in a goal line situation. So yeah, even when teams are scoring against Ohio State in the red zone, it's like, man, this just shows you how good the Ohio State defense is in the red zone.
It's amazing, and it's fun to watch, and they look like they thrive in it, and they love it.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. So, all right, we'll hit another one. Let's see. How about how about just the discipline of Ohio State's defense?
Yes.
And this kind of goes very much in line with what we're just talking about there, where they're not getting fooled, they're not getting out of position, they're not giving up a lot of easy stuff. There was Illinois ran a reverse flea flicker. I mean, this is like straight out of the Michigan playbook, where they're running reverses all the time, they're running flea flickers all the time, they're running reverse flea flickers all the time. This was, I think, very similar to the play that Bryce Underwood threw a touchdown pass in the Michigan spring game, or a long pass in the Michigan spring game this year. And Ohio State's defense stayed home. Everyone stayed home. They had pressure on Altmaier. So it was like they recognized what was going on. They had people in the right place, but also the whole secondary stayed home. Everyone was in position. They had a couple receivers downfield, and I'm sure they're thinking, which wide open guy do we want to throw it to? Because, man, they're going to bite hard on this. And nope, it was just, everyone was just very disciplined, right in the right spot. Altmaier, like right away, just had to throw it away. It was like, there's not, I can't run. The receivers are both covered. I need to get the ball out of my hands before I get hit very hard. It was really, really impressive. Ohio State's defense has been really impressive in so many different ways. This was just a very cerebral play, just a very disciplined play. And it's just, how do you not give up, the stupid touchdown at some point? Like, that's how you do it. You don't give up the stupid touchdown by being in the right spot and staying in the right spot.
Yeah, that was one of the things I wrote down. Just their discipline against trick plays this year has been really good. And even the touchdown run, Peyton Pierce was going to that spot, but there was a 320-pound guy in front of him who got his arms around him, but then let him go. You didn't need to hold him. You just had to get in the way a little bit, and they did. So that was impressive. That's all good news, Tom. Let's go to bad news.
Finally.
So Ohio State, I think this may have been it was a fumble recovery. Ohio State recovers the fumble. I think it maybe have been the Caden McDonald. Recover the fumble on the Illinois 26. You've got killer instinct, quick change. Let's see what you got. What Ohio State has is 13 personnel on first down, short side run, no gain. Like you've got an opportunity. Let's attack. Let's do something. Let's 13 personnel. Let's throw 3 tight ends out there, run to the short side, and see what happens. And I know the short side's been good. Pretty good this year for them. This is, maybe it's too close. Maybe it's like Ryan Day was saying, when the field position was too good to attack downfield because there was no downfield to attack. But you can still, 26 yards, there's enough room to maybe attack if you wanted, or even attack with 12 personnel or 11 personnel. The love of the 13 is, again, it's interesting. I'm choosing to believe it's leading up to something, and they're just trying to find out what they do best in the running game and work all sides, because this was a game they could work on some things, but I just thought, just lacks a little luster, but they still won by 18 on the road, so why don't I just shut up?
Great question. I have many thoughts on that. Now, I think that everyone kind of needs to keep in mind that this is game 6 of what could be a 16 or even 17 game season. And so, it feels like this regular season's halfway over. It's like, yeah, but the whole season, like maybe a third of the way over. It's just, there's so much more to come. And they are still kind of finding their way with some of this stuff, because this is a different team than last year. Why don't they run the ball like they did last year? Well, they probably don't have 2 second-round draft pick running backs on this team this year, especially guys who are going to get drafted in a matter of like 4 months. So that's reason number 1. Reason number 2, they're still sort of figuring some stuff out with the offensive line. And what does this team do well running how does this team do well running the ball? We saw them go through all sorts of different stuff. And then they sort of landed on gap schemes last year, right around the time of the college football playoff. And then it was like, oh, well, this works great. And then they won the national championship. You got a lot of time before you're getting to that point. And it's still, that was sort of shuffling personnel a little bit and figuring out, what fits your running backs and figure out what fits your offensive line with a reshuffled offensive line. There's so much time before you get to that point. This is an Ohio State team that I think everyone would do really well to remember. They're probably basically in the college football playoff right now. They're going to, how many more losable games do you have? We looked at before the season and thought 6 maybe you had on the schedule. And you're through 3 of them. Texas win, Washington win, Illinois win, all comfortable wins. All, Texas, you can argue how comfortable Texas was, but they won and covered all 3 games. Coming up, you've got Wisconsin, which would have been on that list. Not so much anymore. And then you've got Penn State, which is looking a little different than it did preseason. And then you got Michigan, Thanksgiving weekend. That's it. End of list until, Big Ten championship game. So you have time to continue to work on stuff, to continue to figure stuff out. This is not a coaching staff that suddenly got stupid. This is a coaching staff that won a national championship back in January. And you need to be a little bit patient. They have kind of taken the long view with a lot of stuff the last couple seasons, taking pace of play last year, for example, shuffling in running backs, rotating running backs in a way they hadn't necessarily in the past. A lot of this stuff is sort of long view things that it's not always going to look super exciting. But in January, are you going to care whether they beat Illinois by 16 or 18 points or 31 points? You're not going to care at all. You're going to care about what do they look like? Have they figured out what they need to do? Have they figured out their best personnel? That's all you're going to care about. So I would just sort of keep the long view in mind on some of this stuff. All right. So let's see. How about, I was expecting you to do another one, so I had nothing prepared. That's
I can give you another one. I can give you one.
Go ahead.
Regarding the running backs, I think there are only 2 guys or 2 plays where the running back made the first guy miss, both by James Peoples, and didn't really go anywhere because there's another tackler. But that's one of the issues I'm seeing. There's no make you miss with the running backs. And we could talk about scheme and this and 13 personnel and that. Like, make somebody miss. That was Maurice Clarett as a freshman. That was his number 1 job, because the first guy's going to be on you, make that guy miss, and he excelled at that. There's very little of make you miss from the first, make the first tackler miss so that you can actually get past the line and then start your run. Right now, it just so much of the run game is hopefully the blockers and the way this play is designed will get me 5 or 6 yards. And after watching this game, I don't know that the running game is as bad as it felt like, because they are decent enough at getting 4 or 5 yards. But like, when it gets to the point where you're like, well, 4 or 5 yards, that's not bad. That means things are not great, and you want things to be great. Things aren't even good right now. And so to be okay with 4 or 5 yards, on every other carry, and the other carries are like 2, it's like, no, this is still not good. You're just settling. You're starting to settle for average, and that's not what this should be.
No, it's not what it should be, but there are also some tangible signs, I think, of progress. And I'm interested to talk to Ross about this more later in the week on the morning show. But did you notice the first CJ Donaldson touchdown? That looked an awful lot like the 4th and 1 at Washington that got stuffed. I think that might have been the opening drive at Washington, where Nate Roberts just missed a block. Like, he just blocked the wrong guy, and then there was a guy in the hole, and he tackled CJ Donaldson, and CJ Donaldson didn't make him miss or run over him or whatever. Well, in this case, CJ Donaldson, Nate Roberts blocked the right guy, and CJ Donaldson, he didn't quite walk in. He kind of like lunged in, but he went in with not much trouble. So you're seeing like some tangible signs of progress in some areas there. And I think they're going to be, you're going to see more from them in the coming weeks. I'm pretty confident that this is an Ohio State team that is neither going to have the world's most amazing rushing offense, but also end up with a better rushing offense in a month than they have right now. And go ahead.
I think a lot of the issue is they're in a short yardage situation, seemingly a bunch. So they're running into a short yardage defense.
Yeah.
And so take some of that into account. I also don't think Ryan Day cares if it takes them 4 runs to get from, say, the 4-yard line to the end zone. In fact, I think there are times he would prefer that it take 4 touches rather than just 1. Like, he's okay shortening the game. 4 runs, sure. If it means we're still getting in the end zone, give me 4 plays rather than just 1.
Yeah, for sure. And, taking all this into account, I'm going to read the results of Ohio State's drives until the point where it became 34-10 and it was like
Yeah.
statistically final. Field goal, touchdown, punt, field goal, touchdown, and then punt. That was the 3-play drive right before halftime. Touchdown, touchdown. And the first punt, if you're not remembering, there was that one drive before halftime that was, 3 plays where they kind of tried to do a hurry up and they had just had an incomplete pass on third down. But the first drive where they punted, that was the one where Jeremiah Smith had that long pass down the sideline where he caught it but didn't complete the catch. That's how close they came to having basically a perfect first half in terms of scoring and basically a perfect, first 3 quarters in terms of scoring. Was you had the one drive right before halftime and you had Jeremiah Smith not quite completing the catch on a ball that was initially ruled a catch. So, yes, there are areas where Ohio State needs to get better. I don't see anything here right now that I'm looking at as an enormous concern. Honestly, one of the things that was most, not concerning, but most kind of like, was you got the sense during the game that Illinois ran tempo and moved the ball reasonably well against the Ohio State defense. That's something that, guess what? Ohio State's going to see that a bunch until they show that they can handle tempo better than they did. They handled tempo fine. They got Illinois off the field. Illinois ended up with, Illinois scored 3 times all game. And, we talked about how difficult it was for them to actually get the ball in the end zone on those 2 drives where they did. But it's something that Ohio State's going to have to sort of figure out how they want to handle that. The bad news is now everyone knows that they're going to have, this is what teams are going to, this is what keeps Ohio State from being able to sub guys. This is what keeps Ohio State from being able to disguise a bunch of stuff and throw a bunch of crazy pre-snap looks at you. That also means that Ohio State knows this now. And now Ohio State can sort of start working on, okay, this is how we're going to see this from different teams. Okay, how do you address that? How do you, still solve some of these problems and still present some of those challenges? Because teams are not going to be able to do that all the time. But now I think it's safe to assume you're going to see this a few times a game at least. And now you have time to sort of figure out, okay, how do you want to deal with that?
Yeah, and I think Ohio State's one of the best teams, best equipped teams to handle the up-tempo stuff because of the versatility of their defenders and the fact that Arvell Reese can be on the line one snap, be at linebacker the next, and, Caleb Downs doing whatever he did. So I think they're equipped to do it. They just need to see more of it maybe. But yeah, it did give them issues. But it gives every defense issues, I think. So you just continue to work on it, and by the end of the season, you'll be where you need to be. One rushman package that I did like, it was Zion Grady, Caden Curry, and Kenyatta Jackson inside. And then, you get Zion Grady and Arvell Reese as the defensive ends. And then Sonny's just there as a spy late rusher when he sees that it's going to be a pass. And so basically it's a 3rd and long, but now Sonny is the spy blitzer, and that was an effective look for them. And the last thing for me is seeing Matt Patricia with the players. I can understand why players like Patricia more than that's one of the reasons you can like a defensive coordinator more than one that just stays up in the box like Jim Knowles. Like, he's down with the players, celebrating after turnovers, talking with players. And I think that's one of the things that separates the guy on the field from the guy up in the box.
Well, and it's something that we have always seen Ohio State have its coordinators up in the box. Almost universally, they've been up in the box. And then this year when Patricia was down on the field, I thought, oh, that's interesting. And then you think about it, it's like, well, his whole career in the NFL, he's always been down on the field. So it feels like that might become more the norm now. Brian Hartline being up there in his first year as a play caller, I get it. I think it makes a lot of sense. But, being on the field definitely does have its benefits. One last thing that I thought was kind of, there's the thing we've been kind of suggesting that they do. Ohio State is 1st and goal at the 1. And what do? Do they try and ram the ball between the guards? No, Jeremiah Smith is singled up. Well, go ahead and just throw the ball out to him and let him make a play on a guy who has absolutely no chance to defend him. That was maybe the easiest touchdown Ohio State scored all day. Just threw a little fade to Jeremiah Smith. And we have said this so many times already. If there's 2 guys over split Jeremiah Smith out wide. If there's 2 guys over him, you have a numbers advantage inside, run the ball. Or at least not a numbers disadvantage inside, run the ball. If he's out there and there's 1 guy on him, throw a slant or throw a fade or let him choose. And then you throw, sometimes football is complicated. You remember the old Brady Hook football is complicated ad from 20 years ago or whatever it was. Football is complicated, but it doesn't have to be super complicated. Sometimes you just have the best player in college football and you just say, hey, if there's only one guy there, can you beat him? Yep. Okay. Well, then here, do that.
Yeah, it makes too much sense rather than let's bring in 3 tight ends and bring all of the defense with us. And now let's try to smash our heads together and get this done. You will need to do that at times, but also it's okay to take an easy touchdown. Just get it done and then move on. So there you go. That's what we got for you. Things we have learned from rewatching the Ohio State win over Illinois, their second 18-point road win of the season. Perhaps that's all they're going to do this year, just win every road game by 18 points. And wouldn't you just be thrilled if that were the case? So thank you all for tuning in, and we'll talk to you all later.